Hello, I'm Tommy Ted, and I'd like to welcome you to something very special. Extremely personal, but very special. A celebration, but I'll touch on that more a little later. I'd like to welcome you to my Musha Aleste story. Now, Musha Aleste, or Musha as it's known in America, is a shooter made by Compile, part of their Aleste series, released in 1990, and it was on the Sega Mega Drive and the Genesis in Japan and North America. But more on the game a little later. Right now, it's story time. My Musha Aleste story begins at the age of 14. This was when I was just starting to really build up my video game collection. And I was mucking around with 3 other guys at the time. Nick, Vince and Trent. Nick I went to high school with. Vince and Trent were just other guys in the area that we lived in. The other boys were big into collecting as well. Nick was a massive Nintendo fan, and Vince and Trent had a lot to do with later 90s stuff. Vince was heavily into 2D fighters, so he would go after Japanese Saturn imports, and Trent liked PS1 and GameCube and a little bit of Dreamcast. One day we all got together and Vince brought up that he was on the forums for Japanese video games. And he sat there and said to me, he goes, "Oh, I was in the forums last night, and they were talking about this Mega Drive game." He said, "It's called Mushu. You ever heard of it?" I said, "No, I haven't." He goes, "Oh, okay, yeah." He goes, "Yeah, Mushu or something like that." At which point, this was the early days of being able to have internet on your mobile phone. And Trent looked it up and he goes, "You mean Musha?" Yeah, that's it, Musha." "No, never heard of it." And I left it at that and didn't really follow it up. Just kind of didn't really sink in with me. It just kind of went a little bit over my head. But that was the first time that I ever heard of Musha Aleste. We now have to jump forward a little bit to a period in my life that was really horrible, awful, and just really the second wave of really horrible things to happen to me. It's not pleasant at all, but it is important to the story. So, bear with me. So, I'm at age 23, and this is June 20th, Tuesday night. The first sort of horrible thing to happen that would play a part in this. It's pushing 8:30 at night, and I decided I'd want a couple of things from the shops. So I'm driving down the main road where I live, heading towards my local shops. At which point this storm hits, and I'm watching all this stuff come through from the mountains, and it was heavy, and there was fork lightning and massive amounts of thunder. I'm pulling up into the shops when all of a sudden I'm hit by lightning. Yes, you heard me. I was hit by lightning. And at this very spot is where that happened. Right here. So to cut a really long story short, what happened was I was pulling up to the roundabout to see if I had right of way. At which point, from what I can remember, I remember being thrown around in the car like a rag doll. Don't know what's going on, and getting knocked about, and it was just very unsettling. And when I came to, I was on the completely opposite side of the roundabout that I was on. What had happened was the lightning hit the scaffold that was tied to my truck, my ute. And it came down with such a force that the force threw the car through the roundabout. Also, we learnt about 3 months later that I had actually been electrocuted. There was an injury in my back which isn't caused by whiplash, it isn't caused by getting knocked around very heavily, it's caused by mass electrocution. What we worked out was, because it was such a massive storm, I rolled down the car window to see if I had the right of way, and it got me through the window. Just to list off some other injuries for you, getting knocked around a bit, I have brain damage. I have damage to my right frontal lobe. Also, we found out through various injuries that I was millimeters away from death, having my neck snapped, and also the nerve in my lower back, the main nerve that sort of operates your leg and a lot of your back, is severely damaged. So much so that in day-to-day life, ever since the accident, I have to use a walking stick, and it's looking more and more like I may end up in a wheelchair. So just FYI, if you're ever hit by lightning and you live, you don't walk away scot-free. So for 7 months after the accident, I can't work. I'm in the doctors every single day of the week at various different doctors and specialists trying to get me better. But when you're not at the doctors, you get kind of bored when you can't do anything else. So what I was doing at the time was I was playing Sonic Mania a lot. Sonic Mania had just come out about 2 months after the accident in August. So of course I was very heavily playing that. The other thing I was doing was I was catching up on a lot of episodes from Spacies. Just prior to the accident, a little bit of time, I had subscribed to Spacies. What I was doing was, seeing as I had a lot of time, was just going through a lot of his old videos. One of the videos that I just happened to watch was his Musha Aleste video. I'm scrolling through his videos on his channel, and I come across it, and I've gone, oh, that's that Musha game that I remember getting told about years ago. Oh, I'll give it a watch. I'll finally learn what this game's really about. In that video, I'm just seeing how passionate Brian is for that game. He kept going on about all this stuff with the gameplay and the music and doing a let's play of it, and that really helped start the ball rolling for me, was seeing Spacey's video and his passion for it. So now we move forward into the next year. This is 2018, and this is probably one of the worst years in my life. The year begins off pretty quiet, and then we come to February. I'm just gearing up to celebrate my 24th birthday. Just before my birthday, my grandfather dies. It wasn't really a total surprise. He was 86. He had a massive fall 24 hours before he died. So it didn't really come as a surprise, and it had been on the books for a little bit that he was slipping downhill rapidly. What was not expected though, and what really was the hard part for me, was that I ended up having to organise quite a lot of the funeral. And that took a fair bit out of me. I'd never done that before. I'd only ever attended them. And to sort of have to organise people and things and talk to the celebrant every day for about a week kind of is a bit jarring, to say the least. During this time, I was just starting to get back into work a little bit after the accident, but it was still very painful. And I'm still going to see doctors and specialists, but it has quietened down. But I am going to see one, still very regularly, probably about twice a week. I've been going to this place a little bit longer before the accident, for a bulging disc problem, and when I was still going there when the lightning happened, and so it just sort of kept flowing onwards. So I'm starting to get pretty friendly with everyone in the place. It's sort of first name basis with a lot of the staff and the specialist I was seeing, a guy called Paul. And one day I walk in there getting checked on when his shy assistant, Molly, all of a sudden out of nowhere and out of character starts talking. And then Paul jumps in. At which point then it turns kind of flirty. Just a little bit. And my old man was with me and he noticed it too, and he said a little something and I didn't think much of it. But then I went in again the next week and it happened again. And it kept happening and it kept happening. It kept going and going for a tiny bit, and then it kept getting more flirty and sort of getting a bit more full on, shall we say. At which point it's still playing on my mind. Well, cut a long story short, I ended up having a crush on Molly. Not a little one, not overly massive, but it had some importance to me, let's just say that. At this point, I'm still not working fully. Of course, that means there's no real funds coming in. So what do I have to do? I quickly have to find money. What do? Do I sell some albums? Do I sell my games collection? Fortunately, at this time, my mate Eugene jumps in, and he ends up buying a bunch of pinball parts off me for around about $1,000. So I have money. I just gotta get my health right. I do one of the silliest things, looking back, I think I did. Me and my old man felt that the walking stick wasn't a good look. Of course I needed it, but we felt that it wasn't really a good look in terms of, you know, trying to go on a date with someone. So I stopped using it. And I'm managing half okay. I'm in agony, but I'm pushing through it. And if it gets to that, if it gets me to the result I want, well then we can bring the stick back in later, and it will all be worth it. It's still getting flirty. By this point, her boss, Paul, had pretty much worked it out that I was pretty keen on her. So he keeps saying stuff. Molly keeps saying stuff and there's no one else around. I've got my dad watching. I'm telling other people what's going on, and I'm saying it's like this and this and this, and everyone sits there and says, sounds like it. My old man pretty much sat there and said, you got to do this, Tom. We decide that I'm ready to do it. Time comes for me to ask. I go in, get checked, stuff like that. It's still going very flirty in places, stuff being said and all that, and Paul's saying stuff and he's really pushing what he's saying, really pushing. So my old man leaves the room, Paul leaves the room, Molly's left there just typing a couple of things before she moves on. So I crack a joke or two, stuff like that, just the normal stuff that I've been doing, and kept getting laughs, and at which point then I go, righto, you're doing this. And I asked Molly out. Well, that was a fucking stupid thing to do. Yeah. Turns out that with all the serious flirting and all the stuff the boss was saying, yeah, she had a boyfriend. Yeah, they lied to me. They were two-faced. They led me and my dad on to believe in something that got me into, well, probably one of the most embarrassing and humiliating things that I've ever done. Yeah. I ended up getting no apology from either of them. I've heard from a couple of people that evidently he's very embarrassed about what happened. I don't know. I don't know if I can take those people's word for it or not. I don't know. All I know is that I never heard another word. And yeah. And then it gets worse. 5 days later, I nearly died from a massive heart attack. It's 3 o'clock Monday morning. This is middle to late May. I wake up, I'm wondering why I'm up. At which point then I notice that my left arm is full of pins and needles and isn't moving. I didn't think much of it, so I'm lying there just trying to get my fingers to move to get my arm back up and running. At which point then I notice that I don't feel good. I'm feeling very yuck, a little bit sick. At which point I feel some of the worst physical pain I've ever felt. This was bad. Looking at my phone going, I don't know what to do. All of a sudden, it's 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm getting woken up by my alarm to go to work. And I'm heading towards the shower, and my old man's up. And the first thing out of his mouth when he looked at me was, "You look like death." I said to him, I feel it. "Do you want to go back to bed? You know, not worry about work? Do you want me to ring the doctor?" I said, "I'll have a shower and see how I feel." This must have been the longest shower I've ever had. And I'm not feeling any better, I'm just feeling progressively worse and worse and worse. I come out of the shower after what seems like an eternity. My old man looks at me and he goes, "You look 10 times worse than when you went in the shower." I said, "I feel it." He said, "No, screw work. You're going back to bed. I'm going to ring the doctor. I'll let you know when your appointment is." So I go back to bed. My old man waits for the doctors to open. He rings up, makes the appointment. At which point he informs me that he wasn't able to get me into the doctors until 11:30. 11:30 comes. I walk in the doctors. Fortunately, it's not that long for me to be seen. I sit down, tell him what happened. He takes his stethoscope out. Barely has it on me. He looks at me and he goes, "You are going to the middle of the building into the emergency ward right now." So I'm rushed to the emergency ward, at which point then they immediately start ripping off my clothes. They're hooking me up to machines and injecting me with stuff. I remember one of them was adrenaline, but I can't remember what the other stuff they injected me with was. They're laying me in the bed, they were all done. They said, "The doctor will come in with your results." Doesn't take that long for him to come in. He said, "You're here for quite a while." I said, "Why?" He goes, "You've had a massive heart attack. You were still having it when you came in here. We've got to keep an eye on you for a while." He goes, "You came that close to dying." We now move forward again past all the heart attack stuff. And we're approaching a year later since the heart attack. I'm getting ready for my 1-year checkup. At this point, I'm really not happy. It had been a year since all the crap with Molly had happened, and I really wasn't happy because nothing had changed since then. And I'm gearing up to have to deal with the doctors again for the 1-year checkup, and I just didn't want to see doctors. All I've been seeing for the last 2 years was doctors. I was over them. I just wasn't happy. Now I also had a little bit of money left over that I had saved for dates. And I just wanted to get rid of this money. I didn't want to look at it anymore. I didn't want to be anywhere near it. I just wanted it gone. So with the stress of the money still sitting there, and all the stress with the doctors and going on, and with my life not going anywhere, I'm really thinking about doing something crazy and stupid. And I was thinking, what could I do? At which point, I was starting to really dive into shooters and shoot 'em ups. and I was playing things like Thunder Force 4 and Gynaug, Genoog, whatever the bloody thing's called. You know, this one. I can definitely see why they changed your name to Wings of War in the US. So I'm really diving into a whole bunch of Mega Drive shoot 'em ups with my mate Eugene. And it was just blowing my mind, all these games that were there that I hadn't really known about. Because prior to that, my experience with shoot 'em ups looked like this. So I'm sitting there wondering what I can do. I know I just want to do something crazy and stupid and completely insane. At which point, Eugene buys an EverDrive. And he brings it over and he goes, come on, we'll have a go at this. Get your Mega Drive out and have a look what I've got. Okay, I had no experience with an EverDrive up until then. So we're going through a whole list of games and just playing whatever piques our fancy. Eugene pipes up and goes, hey, let's have a look at a shooter. Let's see if there's a shooter on there that we haven't played. Immediately, light bulb goes off. Musha. I have a little bit of a go, Eugene has a little bit of a go. And it wasn't a lot of time devoted to it because Eugene had to leave pretty quickly. But we had a quick go. And what I played, I went, whoa, okay, I can see why this game has a lot of attention around it. And that was it, just sort of think, yep, it's an expensive game that I ain't going to own. So I left it at that. And I'm carrying on with myself for a few days. I'm talking to my cousin and her boyfriend that lived in Japan at the time. And they were helping me get Japanese games. And I sat there and said to her, look, just find out what the one of our regular guys that we deal with over there. I said, find out what he's got. Yep, no worries. So she deals with him. There's not much there, and at this point she's starting to go to a Super Potato as well. And she goes, okay, I've done some digging around for you, and she goes, this is what I've found that might interest you. And she's listing up a whole bunch of games. I remember her mentioning Misty Defender, the Japanese version of that. I remember she mentioned Sword of Vermilion Japanese version. She's going for this list. And all of a sudden she comes up and she goes, oh, there's this Aleste sitting here. Aleste? Musha. There's only one Aleste game on the Mega Drive. And I said, it's the Mega Drive one, it's not the Mega CD one? She goes, it's the Mega Drive one. I said, that's Musha Aleste. I said, look, find out a price for it. She finds out a price, it's too high. I said, oh, forget it. And she goes, okay. She goes, well look, I'll keep talking to him and I'll see how much he comes down. I said, yeah, do it. I said, but don't break your neck. Anyway, she keeps coming down with prices and, you know, he's coming down to this, no. It's getting to a point where he's starting to come down in price and it's like, do I? I'm talking to my dad about doing something special and he goes, well, what's around? I said, I want to see you do something that you wouldn't necessarily do. I said, well, there's this game that's popping up called Musha Aleste. I said, it's a shooter. He goes, yeah? I said, look, it's going to be bloody expensive. It's probably going to be the most expensive game I ever buy. Okay. He goes, you normally wouldn't do this, would you? I said, no, I would. I'd be very cautious. I'd rather go get a whole bunch of other games cheaper and build up my collection more. He goes, well, have a think about it, but maybe look into that. So I immediately text Eugene. I said, mate, when you've got a decent amount of time spare, I said, I need you to play your EverDrive. I need you to load up Musha and give this game a good belting. Might be buying one. Eugene immediately starts playing the game, and it takes about 10 minutes. He texts me back, he goes, this game is amazing. You better get this game. I decide, alright, I'm going to go and see if I can get Musha. I'm dealing with this back and forth, working out a price with the guy over the weekend. It comes down to a price that all of a sudden goes, oh, I can get this. I think I'll do it. Monday comes, and Monday is actually the 1-year checkup for my heart attack. So I got to leave work early and go to the doctors. I'm sitting there not happy, and they're farting around, and basically push comes to shove, it's like any of those checkups. They go in there, this is really important and really serious. Oh yeah, you're fine, don't worry about it. So I'm really unhappy. This is just borderline waste of my time. I immediately drive to the bank, and I put a big wad of money into a bank account. I drive back to work. I'm actually with my old man. And I'm sitting there, and I've got PayPal up with the guy's details ready to send it. And I'm sitting there, and my dad's going, are you sure you want to do this? You know, this is a pretty big step that you're taking in terms of your video game stuff. You know? He said, this is pretty serious. I said, yeah, I'm starting to procrastinate again. And he goes, you do what you reckon. It's up to you. At which point I look at him, I look at my phone, and I go, fuck it. And I sent the money. I'm awash of all these emotions, and I don't know how to process or feel. I'm all over the place with energy and feelings, and the one thing I can think of is to put out a tweet. I joined Twitter at this time. The only thing I can think of to say in this rush is I've done the most insane thing I've ever done as a video game collector. I wasn't really saying what it was, but I did give a hint, and I said it would make some Spacies insanely jealous. I don't know why I said that, I really don't. It just seemed like a thing to do in the rush, and it was very much in the moment. But Brian was a good sport about it. In the week that led up to it arriving, I had to get a converter for it so it would fit in my Mega Drive without having to really sort of mess something up, but that didn't work out and I had to send it back. But I did use it as a hint on Twitter to see if anyone could guess what I had done, and I was hoping to see if anyone would guess what I'd done. I sort of turned to a game for some reason, but I was just trying to see if anyone could guess what I'd done. It comes to the point where I'm going to give one last hint, and for some reason, once again, I don't know why I did this, but I think it was just out of desperation to see if Brian could guess it. I dropped this hint, and the hint was, at that time, the amount of views that his Musha Aleste video had on YouTube. He still didn't work it out. Twitter, I sit there and say to everyone, righto, the special item has arrived and it's going to be revealed today. At which point Spacies asked me how I'm going to reveal it, and I said, oh, I don't know, probably just show it off in some photos or something, or do I do a video on it? He said, nah, you better do a video on it. So I thought, yeah, alright, I'll do a video. The time comes for me to go to the post office and pick it up. I'm itching. I sign for it, I've got it, I rush to the car and I open it. And here she is. I could not believe I had this thing in my hands. So the time comes to reveal it. I'm working out sort of when I'm going to do it, and Brian said, well, I'll get to it when I'm done streaming. And so as a little bit of a heads up, I put this out on Twitter. G'day guys, Tommy here. Just letting you guys know that at 9:15 tonight, Australian Eastern Standard Time, got a video coming out, big reveal video. This is for mainly since Spacies. I was talking to him earlier this morning, and he sat there and said, when you get it, do a video on it. So at 9:15 tonight, after he's done streaming, got a big reveal video coming out. This is going to make you insanely jealous, Brian. I cannot stress that enough. Just to spin you out even more. So yeah, 9:15 tonight, Australian Eastern Standard Time. Got a video coming out. It's not going to be hashtagged or nothing. So just for the followers. Yeah, this is massive. Really, really massive. I cannot believe I have this, even though I've had it in my hands. So 9:15 tonight, big reveal. Since Spacies, make sure you see this, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Yeah, that was when I was really starting to grow out my hair. So I'm still talking to Spacies about it just before he was streaming, and he goes, "Oh, you've set a time. Are you going to live stream on Periscope?" And I said, "Well, no, but I could. Do you reckon it's a good idea?" He goes, yeah, sort of do it like this and it could really pay off. So it became a Periscope live stream. I jump on Periscope and it's all glitching up and it's not really working for me, but it's working enough where it is streaming. And I learned that there was 2 viewers watching this stream. It turned out that one of them was Spacies, fortunately. And I'm sort of telling a bit of a story and stuff like that, and it gets to the point where I sit there and go, I have bought Musha Aleste. And I'm noticing that people are leaving in and out and coming back and all that stuff, even with the glitching going on and the picture being sideways. I finish up the stream going, well, that was a little bit of a disaster, but at least I got the message through. And I see this tweet from Spacies in a reply. So, finally, the big reveal's done and I finally bought Musha Aleste. Next thing, here comes the real fun part. Digging my teeth into it. First thing that's noticeable about Musha Aleste is the aesthetic, the look of it. It's not a full-blown space shooter. A lot of it takes place in sort of like rural landscapes and out in the sea and sort of inside mechanical sort of buildings and all these sort of space stations and machinery, but all with like a very Japanese, traditional Japanese sort of blend aesthetic, which is really interesting and very cool. The game has 7 levels, all of which really like to kick your ass. It's one thing about Musha Aleste is that the difficulty is punishing, really difficult, a complete ass kicker. But at the same time, you just cannot get enough of it, and you really just want to keep playing and playing and playing. There is a basic plot to Musha Aleste, but depending on the region, there are slight differences between the Japanese and the North American. In the Japanese version, the story takes place in the 91st century, but in the American version, it takes place specifically in the year 2290. Mankind has moved away from Earth and has started making colonies in outer space and sort of expanding beyond the realms of Earth. Housed in one of these space colonies is the super intelligent computer Dia 51, which is the main villain of Musha Aleste. Now, there are differences with Dia 51 with the Japanese and the American version. There are differences. In the Japanese version, it's never known why Dia 51 goes rogue and starts doing evil. They do explain the story that the scientists and they are trying to work out why Dia 51 went wrong, but they never do, and they call in the Musha team, the Musha Aleste unit, to sort all this out. In the American version, it is explained why Dia 51 goes evil. Basically, Dia 51 wants to be ruler of the solar system, and so they send in the Musha team to stop that. Another really cool thing that's part of the story and just part of the overall really interesting factor of Musha Aleste is that the game has a female protagonist. Once again, there are differences depending on the region. In America, the character is called Terry, but in Japan, they bring back the character of Eleanor from Aleste 2, and Eleanor would go on to appear in other Aleste games. But basically, when you have the controller in your hands, it's you that's really in control of your mech suit, your Musha. Or in my case, when I've got the controller, I'm in charge. I'm in control. I'm the protagonist. But what's really important is the gameplay of Musha Aleste. And my god, is the gameplay brilliant. One of the most interesting things is the bosses. It has very interesting bosses, the game. All these kind of futuristic enemies, but with a blend of the traditional Japanese aesthetic as well. Really cool, really interesting, really unique. And of course, when you're talking about a shooter, you got to talk about the weapon system. And oh boy, does Musha have a really cool weapon system. So your basic weapon in Musha Aleste is what's called the seal cluster. This is your basic weapon. This can be upgraded by collecting power chips, which come from a little vessel. You have to shoot this little vessel for it to spit out the power chips. And every time you collect power chips, it upgrades your seal cluster into something a little bit more spectacular. But the power chips also have a secondary use. For every 3 you collect, you get a little vessel that accompanies you, which is an option. You can have 2 with you at the one time, but you can't have any more. However, you can keep collecting power chips and you keep building them up in inventory. So when you lose one from your inventory immediately comes in and replaces it. And these options you can sort of have a little bit of control over. You can set them to just forward shoot, you can set them to go sideways so you have a freeway shot, you can set them to roam so they can go out and sort of have a mind of their own. Really, really cool. And then we come to your secondary weapons, and oh boy does Musha have some really cool secondary weapons. So there are 3 special weapons in this game. The Blazing Beam, the Vanishing Buster, and the Defense Detonator. Also in regards to the special weapons, you can collect the same special weapon icon to upgrade the special weapon. And you can go up to level 4 and weapons just keep getting more insane and crazy and awesome. So the Blazing Beam is pretty much just a laser, but you can build it up by collecting the same green power up to build it into this massive, huge laser. Really, really cool. One of my favorite weapons in a game of all time. The Vanishing Buster is a set of bombs, look like missiles, and the more you upgrade the Vanishing Buster, the more bombs you get. But then when you go up to full level 4, you also get this black hole, which appears and disappears and keeps popping up over the screen, which attracts and sucks in enemies. Really cool. And then the Defense Detonator is basically an energy shield, which you can keep upgrading. But once you also get to full level, you also have these energy blasts that shoot and hit enemies as well. Really cool. And then there's the music. Oh my god, the music! Bet you weren't expecting that, were you? Toshiaki Sakoda's soundtrack for Musha Aleste is nothing short of incredible. One of the best soundtracks on the Mega Drive one of the best soundtracks in video games, period. It's a fresh speed metal style soundtrack. An interesting thing was I found out through some research was that originally the soundtrack was knocked back by Compile. So Sakoda-san had to go and do another soundtrack essentially. Fortunately, Compile preferred the original soundtrack. This is one of the standouts of Musha, is its soundtrack. This soundtrack is really as much as everything is a standout of Musha Aleste, the music just really stands out. Especially when you've got your Mega Drive hooked up to a really nice amplifier and a good set of speakers. That's another awesome thing about Musha Aleste, its sound design. When you've got it through amplifier and speakers, you feel those explosions, you feel the music, it vibrates through you. And when you get hit, you feel it in your gut. When there's an explosion and you lose a life, you really feel it in your gut. The sound design in this game is very, very impressive. So I cannot urge you enough to try this game, however ways you can. It was re-released on the Wii Virtual Console a few years back, and just recently has shown up on the Japanese Mega Drive Mini. And then of course there's another way which involves the internet. And then there's another way that also involves China. And it kind of looks like the real thing, but it's not. But I know there are some people that are really going to want the real game. And then that's where a problem arises, because this game's expensive. Especially the American version. No, that can't be right. No, that's got a warranty card with it. Then surely there must be one without the warranty card that's nowhere near that price. No. My advice is, if you're really going to go after a real copy, get the Japanese version. For the price of what the loose American cartridge is going, you got a damn good shot of getting a box complete Japanese copy. All the necessary stuff that you need for the gameplay is in English, so you don't have to stress about needing a translation. The story's in Japanese, but all the important stuff is in English. So I mentioned earlier that this was a celebration. Well, it is. We're coming up to the 3rd anniversary of the Lightning. It's also the 2nd anniversary since my heart attack. And the date of release for this, May 21st, is when I got Musha Aleste. This is the 1-year anniversary of me receiving Musha Aleste. I really just cannot believe what a big part this game has played in my life, and that's really strange for me to say. It's helped me become, really good friends with Spacies. I regularly have conversations with Toshiaki Sakoda, the composer, on Twitter. He and I follow each other, and we do, have conversations, every now and again, on a slightly regular basis, and that's wonderful. I talk to many people about this game, and they share their thoughts and their experiences with me, and I've introduced it to some people, and it's just really played a massive part in my life. And then of course it's made me a fan of the Aleste series. I've gone back and played Super Aleste on the Super Nintendo. I've had experiences with both GG Aleste 1 and 2 on the Game Gear recently, which was absolutely fantastic. And I cannot wait to see what the new owners of Aleste M2 are going to do with a brand new game in the series called Aleste Branch, where they're bringing back Eleanor. I cannot wait to see what happens with that. This game has become one of my all-time favourite games ever. I would probably say it's my second, I will say it's my second favourite game of all time. My favourite game of all time has to go to Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I've been with that game my whole life. That was the game that made me fall in love with video games as a whole. It was the game that I obsessed over for years and years and years. It made me a huge Sonic fan. It made me fall in love with Sega, and it was the game that really set me on this crazy path with video games. So that has to go to top spot. But I might have to touch on Sonic 2 in another video, kind of like this one. So that's it. That's my Musha Aleste story. So far, I've got to add the so far in there because I still think my Musha Aleste story is still in its infancy. But for the purpose of the anniversary, we'll close the chapter here for now. I want to thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you got something out of it. I better wrap this up because otherwise I'm not going to stop. I could talk about this game constantly, all day, all night, till the cows come home. I really could. It's just that much of a fantastic, incredible game that I don't shut up about it. I mean, hell, what else do you expect? It's Musha Aleste!